Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final installment of Western Month, and today I've saved the best till last as far as Western genre games go, the quintessential game that everyone knows and loves from the Western genre, and that is the standard known as Red Dead Redemption. Now this is a masterpiece of a game. I mean, when you consider Western genre titles as a whole, this is the standard. This is what every single Western game from now on lives in the shadow of. And I think with the success of Grand Theft Auto 4, Rockstar Studios had a bit of money, they had a bit of fan appreciation, they were thinking, well, what can we do that's different? What can we do that's a bit more dangerous? Or what can we do that might push the envelope? And they went ahead and crafted this brilliant game. Up until now, Rockstar had made a lot of diverse games outside of Grand Theft Auto, including a well-received but forgotten by many title known as Red Dead Revolver. A Western title that lacked the scale of an open world title like Grand Theft Auto 4, but still had a lot of staying power in its setting and mechanics. So naturally, Rockstar did what no one had done before with the genre, a living, breathing, expansive open world Western title that would later set the standard for the next would-be Western titles to emerge thereafter. In the game, we play as John Marston, an outlaw turned farmer whose family is taken by the US government and ransomed in exchange for the deaths or arrests of two of Marston's old brothers-in-arms from the Dutch gang, Bill Williamson and Javier Escuela. Beginning the game, the tone is set with the protagonist, John Marston, a man from a dying lifestyle taking a train to Austin, Texas. Stories of flying machines, colonization of Native American land and the expanse of a civilization set Marston's way of life as a dead dream crushed under the heel of progress. We find ourselves in the dusty town of Armadillo and are led to the hideout of our first target, Bill Williamson. Marston confronts his old brother-in-arms and in the ensuing exchange is shot and left to die. Well done, John. Roll the credits. Within minutes of the game we have our goal, our antagonist, and our journey's tone is set in place. We start the game with Bonnie McFarlane, our saviour from our wounds, giving us chores and jobs to pay for the debts of John's care. It's a nice way to parallel the two styles of the gameplay: honest work and murder.
I guess that's that then.
Throughout the open world parts of the game we also get to explore hideouts, hunt animals, barter for goods, collect bounties, complete side quests, gamble, race, break in horses and even take casual rides on stagecoaches and trains. With exceptions to Rockstar's sequel Grand Theft Auto 5, I can't honestly think of another game that does variety as well as Red Dead Redemption. It feels like a living, breathing world full of potential and opportunity, and although the Wild West may be dying, there's a lot of action in this game. As we visit Armadillo again, we find a lot of work for hired gunmen. The weaponry only allows for a few rifles and revolvers to start with, but as the game progresses, Marston can find, upgrade and purchase a variety of fun weapons to use. Due to the lack of fully automatic weapons, for the most part this game relies heavily on accuracy and cover-based shooting. You really feel like you're a gunslinger when you assault a hideout or rescue a bank from hostages, revolver in hand, or chase down a wanted man, tie him up and bring him to jail. There's even a notoriety meter which fills when you do good or bad actions. Plus, probably the most fun element of the game's combat is the Deadeye meter. As John kills the scum of the West, the bar will fill and allow him to slow down time and pick his shots more carefully. At the beginning you only get to slow down time, but eventually you will get instant lock-ons on the targets you tag, and then with the third upgrade be allowed to actually pick your shots carefully and then lay waste to anything in your way. Plus we can loot dead bodies for cash and hone our skills using challenges from the menu system in order to unlock swanky new outfits. That said, some mechanics of the game can be a bit jarring, such as the weird decision to rapidly tap the A button to run faster than normal, which becomes extremely irritating as you progress. Plus every now and then you'll get a glitch, which really changes the gameplay, I guess. I'm stuck. In fact, Marston's story is one of the most compelling experiences I've ever played in gaming. Marston has a variety of emotions that we get to see on display. He's a man who wants to change his ways, to do good, and yet is constantly tested with his convictions, and is continually used by people for his skill set as a veteran killer. For the most part of the game, we also meet some diverse and interesting characters who aid us in John's mission, although for the most part, more or less all of the characters end up using John. And from replaying the game, I realised how many of the characters are in a position which John idealises only to let his expectations down with their own immorality and compromises. A lot of the characters are likeable, and yet undercut by vices which twist their morality. Still, after missing our chance to apprehend Bill Williamson in Austin, we also get to head into Mexico and find ourselves in the midst of a war between the Mexican army and rebel civilians. Wanting no part of the bloodshed, Marston is reluctantly dragged into the conflict and ends up fighting for both sides in order to get information on the whereabouts of his former gang. We meet Landon Ricketts, a gunman who outlasted his prime, and a young Mexican woman called Luisa whose naive gestures for revolution cloud her judgment. Allies are made and turned to enemies, and friends of Marston such as Luisa become embroiled in the follies of war. And yet when the tyrant Colonel Allende dies and the revolution leader Reyes holds power with both Williamson and Escuela dealt with, Marston finds that nothing changes, no one is remembered, and all that is accomplished is a change of men, but not ideals. On his return to Blackwater with news of his dealings, John is then told by Edgar Ross, his family's captor, that he's not finished his work and must now kill the leader of his old gang, Dutch van der Linde.
So that's the thing when you have litigation done by cowboys, it doesn't work. You've got to get a good lawyer, you've got to make sure that they give you the right paperwork so you don't get into this kind of mess. Luckily I've got a lawyer for my show and he's given me this to sign. That should take care of things. Lovely.
In fact, in the closing chapters of the game, John and Dutch meet several times. We see the extent of Dutch's madness in each encounter, but as John explains, he was a good man once with ideals who couldn't change the world's corruption with their robberies and heists of old, and went crazy when he realised nothing he did would change anything. Dutch and Marston fight several times until, with the aid of Ross and the US military, John assaults Dutch's mountain hideout. Dutch's men that block the way have all lost what they hold dear: their homes, their land, their heritage, their families. They banded together to resist the actions of the corrupt manipulators such as Ross, and yet Marston, a like-minded individual, caught in a bind, is the one who sends them to their graves. On the cliff top, Dutch confronts Marston one last time. He tells John that there is nowhere for men like them to exist in the new world they live in. He casts aside his weapon and jumps from the cliff, dead on impact on the rocks below. However, Marston's debt is paid and he returns to his ranch and family. His wife and son are safe, and Marston begins to rebuild his hard-earned life as a humble farmer. As the game comes to a close, John teaches his son how to herd cattle, hunt elk, and eventually saves him from a grizzly bear attack. Overall, things are well. Marston talks to Jack about inheriting the farm and how one day it might be the finest one in all of Austin. Until the army attacks. The Marstons fight tooth and nail to defend their home, killing many soldiers as they relentlessly assault the ranch. Marston's reluctant and lazy friend Uncle is hit with a killing shot. As the family retreat to the barn, John saddles Jack and Abigail onto a horse, telling them to run and not look back. As John approaches the barn door, he glimpses outside to see dozens of men readying their weapons. John realizes it's the end of the line and takes a deep breath. He opens the door, stands and faces the men. He draws his gun and takes out a few men, and finally, a barrage of bullets rain down on him. In a game like this, I think it ends perfectly with Marston's story. Playing as John, we really get to know him well. We understand his skill, compassion, mercy, anger, weariness, reluctance, pride, pessimism, and optimism. John tries all he can to save his family, and succeeds. John watches dictators fall and new ones rise. He sees an old legend live out his legacy. He sees the world he knew change drastically before his very eyes. He sees new friends leave and old friends die. Marston redeems himself, at a huge cost to those he loves and the world around him. And yet even still, it's not enough to change his fate. The fate of an outlaw. Oh, bury me not on the lone prairie, where the coyotes wail and the wind blows free. And when I die, don't bury me beneath the western sky on the lone prairie, beneath the western sky on the lone